Hello and welcome to episode number 30 of Triple Tap. Can you believe it? In the last 29 weeks, that's well over half a year now, we've interviewed doctors, crypto experts, TAP satellite admins, health professionals, common law sheriffs, legal experts, people working with rescuing children, and even a tribal member from the Githibal Narakbul Yukum Yukum Nation that was recently launched on the 1st of November. Over the last 3 years, we've certainly seen many things change, be revealed and come to light. And the freedom movement has certainly exposed many people for who they are and what or who they represent. Some groups have been part of taking money from people, and for what exactly? And some groups creating events to rev people up and to protest. However, when you take a closer look at what are they really achieving? Don't get me wrong, every little bit that people do is good and admirable. However, what we need is real solutions to assist all Australians step away from the old, corrupt and fast failing system. For those of you who followed the Australia Project for quite some time now, you will know that we have many initiatives that we are actively working on, and you might want to know what's happening with them. Well, we're going to share with you tonight about what we've been up to and why it's important for you to become a part of it so that we can all move forward together. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you know them already, so let me introduce you the rest of the amazing TAP executive team, my fellow colleagues and friends. We have one of the original founders, Lance Brown. Kent couldn't join us this evening, unfortunately. And of course, we have the ever so diligent Kim Robertson, who's also from one of our TAP satellite groups, as well as our executive. So welcome, Kim. Welcome, Lance. Thanks for joining me here tonight. Got a bit of a different Triple Tap tonight. How are you both?
Well, thanks, Ainsley. Really good. Really good. It's exciting actually for us to be able to give an update tonight. There's so many amazing things going on at the moment, and everything that we're working on is the keys literally to unlock this control that we've been under for so long. So, and it's really exciting to talk about that. Be able to share with our viewers and our audience of exactly where we are, where we're going, and what's rolling out.
Fantastic. How's your week been, Lance? You're always ever so busy. How's your week been? We always ask you that question. Like, we don't get to speak during the week, so we like to know what you've been up to during the week before we kick off, and we'll start talking about the projects after that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Look, honestly, I haven't had a bad week in 3 years. It's been an amazing journey. Met so many awesome people along the way. It uplifts me. It revitalizes me. Every day I get more hope for the good people, not only of this nation, great nation, but also for the entire world. We really are living in special times, and I know it's tough on some people, and I find it very enjoyable, not the grief that's being caused, but obviously the challenges and how we're all rising to the challenges. So that gives me great hope, great joy, and I feel really, really blessed to be here with such great people. Now, Kent couldn't make it tonight. He's on a secret mission, which I can't talk about, which was the last minute thing, but he didn't need my permission, but he definitely has my support. So I'll miss him in here tonight, but looking forward to a good show.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we haven't got any questions prepared. What the idea is tonight, we can see a lot of people jumping on already because we didn't really give them a promo. We gave them a little bit of who's on tonight because we didn't tell them. We wanted to keep it a big secret. So now that you guys are all on here, welcome. And I invite you to use the chat box vigorously tonight and be asking your questions, which we're going to obviously share with us here. And, we'll share with you what we're doing with all the projects, and we'll share with you the new Telegram group that we've got that's going to keep you up to date with all those projects as we go along, because a lot of people have been wanting to know, what are you doing, and they really want to see some action. So we might kick it off. Who would like to kick off with one of the projects we're doing that you guys have been working on?
Look, if I could start, we thought this was really important. We would have liked to have some, some special guests because they bring great value. But we've got some major initiatives at the moment, and we'll probably go through them one at a time. But we thought it's really important to emphasize these projects. So guys, we need your help. There's no two ways about it. The government's really vulnerable at the moment. Now, they mightn't seem like that, but I interact with them daily, and we're seeing the net results. They're in full meltdown mode. They are panicking. They're making stupid mistakes. They're extremely vulnerable. Now, I hope there's been a few people watching the, what do they call him? Is it Aussie Cossack or Crazy Cossack?
Yeah.
Anyway, look, he's a good guy. And he's fighting the council down there in the western suburbs of Sydney. Now, the councils are super, super vulnerable because they're a bullshit institution and they've been ripping us off. And we're starting to see their tender belly appearing. So the people's councils are so important as an initiative. These things are going to take off like a bushfire. And my concern is this, is that our enemy is very cunning, not intelligent, not creative, but cunning. And they're going to try and infiltrate this. And we believe there's already been that done in a few operations. So we need to be vigilant. We're going to ask all the TAP satellite admins to give them a little love, the people's councils, because they need encouragement, but they're also very vulnerable to infiltration. So we want to make sure we've got the right people who have been doing the right thing for a very long time. Anyone that you think may be nefarious, get the rest of the team in the People's Council to proceed with caution until they prove which side of the fence they're sitting on, because that's the way these scumbag, and look, they're the Masons. That's the way they infiltrate. They get involved, their little sneaky, little peaky sort of beady eyes like rats, looking out and, let's sneak in here. And that's how they conquer. They conquer from inside. That's their MO.
Yeah.
So be aware, but get involved.
I think one of the biggest things we've seen, Lance, is that over the years, people have, maybe it's because we haven't known, but we haven't really kept our politicians or our councils accountable for what they're doing. We've just taken them for granted that they're going to run the country or run the local councils and do the right thing by us. And we're seeing more and more that that's not the case. And that's why the People's Council is so important, that we can now start holding the existing councils and the job that they're doing accountable for what they're doing and not doing, making sure they're doing it for the right reasons.
I think, and more than that too, it's a lot of you will know we've been going around and doing presentations in quite a few places, and there'll be more next year. But one of the things that we really stress consistently is when you create a People's Council, it is really important that you have your website up, you have your meeting minutes up. Should anyone need to see the finances of it, have it readily available for them. Make sure that if there is any dodgy stuff going on, that you call it into account. You call those people out for what they're doing. No longer in anything that we do can we simply hand over our power. It is not okay to do that. We must take it back individually. Any initiative going forward, if we don't, we will very quickly end up in the same position that we are now. People's councils are very easy to create. You don't have to have an ABN. You don't have to have a company set up. You don't need any of that. You have a group of people, you get together, you have nominations for a mayor, admin, you've already got the treasury, you've already got the litigation department. You don't need anyone. You don't need TAP. You don't need My Place as a background to start your People's Council. You can do this for yourself and your community. We did it up here in Mackay only last week or the week before. So it's very easy. If you need help with it, shout out. More than happy to help. But just remember that always with any initiative, make sure it is transparent and the people who you elect are held to account for their actions.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give Kim some reinforcement there, because I agree with that 100%. You're going to find that once this gains momentum, and it's gaining incredible momentum, they're not going to be tap satellite groups that are organising the people's councils, and they're not going to be my places. They might not even be anyone in the freedom movement. By and large, across Australia, people are jacked off with their council representation. Now, we've seen the consolidation of these mega councils, and the money's going up the hill. So they just kick it up the hill, and off it's gone to Zelensky in Ukraine, so he can whatever he does, I don't know, whatever he does, dances around
buy a few more biolabs.
Yeah, I think he buys bondage gear. That's what I think he actually does with the money. But anyway, that's who he is. So it's just people who are sick to death of being ripped off on their rates. Now, I'll give you a quick story. Where Kent lives, his council used to be Boonah Council out there, and they got swallowed up by the evil witch of Queensland into a mega council called Scenic Rim. Now, when it was Boonah Council, they were in the black, which means they had a healthy budget surplus from the rates, and all their services, their roads, their parks, everything was in top condition. So once they amalgamated and all the rates are going into general revenue, all of a sudden they're in the red and nothing's working properly. This is how they do the crime. They consolidate the revenue. No one knows exactly where it's all going, and next second, boom, it's gone. Bit of a magic trick. So they're going to be awesome, but we need to be engaged. If you're in a council area, and everyone is, then be engaged at that local level. And they're lawful. And that's the really cool thing about it. And the corporate councils aren't lawful. So we've got that bonus as well, that we've actually got force of law on our side once we start doing this. Now, we've seen the good that they've achieved in Frankston People's Council. We can have that same impact everywhere. But like in Boonah, they're going to get 50% of the ratepayers straight away. So they'll form a proper functioning council with revenue and the ability to do work. And I think you're going to find that some of the ex-councillors before the consolidation happened are going to come in because they were good people and they saw what's happened. So they want to re-engage. This is a big story that's going to roll out. This is how we make effective change, because the councils are the really one doing the damage. Now think about in Queensland, the new legislation. What it says is the health officer for the council will be able to determine whether it's a pandemic or not.
It's the CEO, actually, the CEO of the council.
CEO of the council, even worse. So the People's Council, the CEO will be a decent person and saying, well, I don't see any science supporting this narrative, so we don't have a problem here. Thank you, no thank you. That's why this is very, very powerful. Lots and lots and lots of the garbage that we have to put up with, the oppressive planning acts, the lack of land, the price of real estate and property is all a direct result of local government. And so now we've got an awesome system that works to rectify that. And we do it at a community level.
Yep. And we had a chat a couple of weeks ago with Glenn Dreyer, who was the common law sheriff and was training the sheriffs. And so they believe will be working with the council so that when you get to at least 100 members within your council, you'll be able to then apply to have your sheriff for your council, which you can then get in contact with Glenn and the community, the common law group. And he will then obviously, find you a sheriff or a trainer sheriff so that you'll have a sheriff in your area. Why is that important? Lance, do you want to explain to people why that is important? We were talking about that the other night with Spiro. Do you remember?
Yeah, look, I was in late on that conversation, I think, but the sheriff is going to provide that level of oversight. This is the way I see it, between the courts and the police services of Australia to make sure that there's a real need for a warrant, to make sure that the police aren't being weaponized by the government to use it. And that's what we see. Look, there's good people in the police services and forces in Australia. Not many, but there's a few. They've all been weaponized. And and they're just following orders, and you see this poor behavior all the time. So we need to stop that. And the best way to stop that is oversight. And so the sheriff is outside of the police service. He's not part of it.
Yep.
So, and he's the interface with the courts. So it is an extremely important function. I didn't know that once you get 100, you could apply for a sheriff, but that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think the other important point that was raised with that meeting with Spiros was that, particularly when these bills start to roll out, as it's already been passed in Queensland, we're talking about the one where the CEOs can call a pandemic in your area. So what that means is that should they deem it necessary, they can come to your house and force entry. They can strip you naked if they like. They can force inject you. They can take your children away, basically, in the essence of it. Now, Kent has actually gone through that legislation, and that's it in its essence. So where a sheriff comes into play is that if you've got the police that turn up into your door, on your doorstep, then you've got the capability to call in the common law sheriffs to counteract that or help counteract that. Now, one of the things that we've done in Mackay, and I should recommend that other people do it in their areas, is we've actually got a emergency channel for our region. It's a dedicated Telegram account. It isn't used for anything. Nothing gets posted in there unless someone is in an emergency. And that, as far as I'm concerned, constitutes much, much more than an emergency. So you put your address in and a phone number should you want, and we get people to you straight away. So it's a really good initiative. If anyone wants to pick that up and run with it, just create it in your area so you've got some sort of safeguard should those things start to roll out.
That's a great initiative.
Look, I personally don't think it's going to come to that. I'll tell you what I personally believe is the bad guys are losing so badly now. And I know that's hard to see, but they're losing so badly. They're just looking for ways to possibly find a way out for themselves. And the harder they push, the more people they wake up. So that legislation that's been passed, even though they need it to try and gain some sort of control, just forces people to say, well, you're not injecting me, I don't want it. And then the pushback comes, right? So these things, look, they're necessary, unfortunately, to wake up all those people that just want to, it's Sunday morning, the alarm's gone off 3 times, they're not going to open their eyes. But eventually they will, and that's the pain. And that's this ridiculous legislation that we're seeing now. And I can tell you that if you want a ridiculous premier, you will not get a better one than Anastasia Palaszczuk. She is completely, utterly incompetent. So when someone says, I think this is a good idea, she doesn't even think about it. She just goes, let's do it. She's not thinking the other side of the game. That's for sure, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think she thinks at all.
It's not true legislation, though, is it, Lance? Because we know that they're just putting it into play. It's not passing through the proper levels of the proper due process, and it certainly doesn't have the proclamation certificates that are supposed to come with all these legislations.
Yeah, well, look, okay, so we all know that. They don't have a Senate in Queensland. So since they abolished the Senate many, many, many years ago, they haven't had law. They haven't passed any new laws because you need the Senate to pass new laws. That's part of our gig, right? That's a give me. We haven't had the Queen since 71. So they haven't passed any laws since then as well. So it's all fake. It's all a power play. It's all designed for us to stand our ground. Brings me back to the Cossack. He stands up to the police when they try and push him around. He says, I know my rights. I'm not backing up. I've got a lawful right to be here. You've walked towards me. You need to leave. Right? He's got him on camera. He follows through. He doesn't make threats. He follows through with his complaints. And he's got him on the run. And it's that simple. And it's a good lesson for anybody.
Yeah.
That's what we've got to do. That's the brave new world, guys, is we don't take shit from these losers.
I think we'll incorporate this maybe a little later on in our chat, but it's going to be really important to make note of the interaction of the councils with the nations that are being built as well. So perhaps we can cover that off when we talk about the nations. And just on that note, we all had a conversation with Spiros the other night about the whole initiatives that are underway moving forward with the nations, with the councils, with the trusts, and he's fully on board.
Yeah, and look, there's some positives coming out of, we rushed in, we started the People's Trust. There were reservations. There's no point being proven right. When something falls over, it doesn't matter how right you are. A fail is still a fail. We work as a team, but we move forward and we learn from it. And one of the most important things we've learned from this is if we try and fight them individually, they're going to swamp us.
Mm.
So what we do is we take class actions on everything. So we say, right, we're challenging this, bang, class action, we win it. Then we pick a class action on something else, we win it. And by winning these class actions, you create case law. Now, we've all seen what happened with the Supreme Court and the fines, the COVID fines in New South Wales. That's case law. So that rolls out everywhere, not just New South Wales. That's the basis to challenge your fines in any other state and say, hey, this is what the New South Wales Supreme Court ruled. So because they've set a precedent. And to challenge that precedent, I think you'd have to go to the High Court to try and have it overturned.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the High Court are ever going to overturn it because, again, I'm going to come back to these guys are losing so bad, they're all looking over their shoulder and they're all saying, what's our fallback position? And they think their fallback position is hiding in plain sight. So if we give a few wins and we look like we're trying to be honest, we may save our skins. It won't work for them, but we'll take the wins anyway. And we move forward.
Yep.
So it's really a positive. It's really positive events that are shaping the new direction we're taking at the moment.
Yep. So guys, if you want to have any chance of questioning and querying your rates with the councils, that's why it's so important to get involved, create your local councils in your local area, keep them small and manageable. I think Spiros, the number was something like 10,000. If you can keep 10,000 within your community for your councils, it becomes manageable. Over time, you get to know all the members in your area. And then when you've got enough people that want to go in for a group action against your council, then he certainly will have the ability with him and his team to then take those councils on rather than do everybody individually. Because I think everyone was so excited about the trust. It was a great idea, but he is one man with a small team, and so it was just going to be like going crazy for the poor guy. We would have kept him, dragged him out of retirement, I think, as it was. So, but he's very passionate about his law, and he wants to be a part of this. So we're ever grateful for him. So that's why the People's Trust idea took a little bit of a trajectory. It's not forgotten. They're still there. Websites, you'll notice some of the websites are just a little bit sort of coming soon on some of the websites, just until that gets worked on. But it is there working in the background. So maybe then, because we've just been talking about councils, maybe we can move and see how that ties in with the nations, guys. What guys have been doing with working with the nations.
I think before we get into that, I just want to say a couple of words on community.
Sure, Kim, go ahead.
Because it's the basis of everything. And we've been talking about creating community for a long time now. I know in Mackay here, we've got an amazing community, and it's really, really important. And all of these things that we've been talking about for the last year are really coming into fruition now. I had 2 people on the weekend who came to me and told me that a year ago they were lost. They really didn't know what was going on, where they were going to go, what they were going to do, had to stop their job because of the mandates, and just in that flap, like so many people were, not understanding what was going on. Both of them have become heavily involved in our community initiatives. Both of them have said now they feel that they found their purpose. And I can tell you it makes every hour, every minute that you work on this worthwhile, because you're seeing the upliftment of people. You're seeing the initiatives roll out in your area. There is nothing more important than building that community for the people that you work with, for the people that you are friends with, for those that you don't know, to bring in. Communities now are starting to roll out these initiatives, like the People's Council, because they've formed their trusted groups. They're bringing people in. We're bringing people in all the time. They're also going to be important as we move into the next phase with all of the nations, which Lance is going to talk about in a minute. But I can't say it enough. If you haven't created that community spirit, if you haven't got the initiatives up and running, whatever that might look like in your area, and every area is going to be different, it is never, ever too late to start. Because not only is it important for the bigger picture, it's also mostly important for the people.
Yeah. And look, I had the privilege on the weekend to go and speak at a Christmas party on the Sunshine Coast. Just an awesome group of people. There was about 180, 200 people there. And there was, and I won't remember all the groups, so if someone was there, don't take offense if I've forgotten you, but there was Stand in the Park, there was Common Law Group, obviously there was people from TAP Satellite, there was people from My Place, and all the speakers apart from me spoke about how everyone needs to come together. And so I got up and I spoke and I said, guys, I got to tell you, we're all together already. Now, we're in different little family groups because some people are really interested in common law. Some people stand in the park, and that's one of the best protest initiatives, and it's raised so much awareness because people feel happy to engage. There's no demonstration, there's no protest that's obvious. So they said, what are you doing this for? Right? And so we are together, and you could see it was together. 5 or 6 different groups, all sharing the same space, all with the same desires, and just slightly different methodologies for outcome. And I'm going to say that right here, right now. If there's something that really resonates with you, you can be in a TAP Satellite and a common law group. That's intelligent. You can be in a TAP Satellite group and a My Place, because My Place offer a structure. The TAP Satellite groups offer independent free thought. Form your own community, run your program how you want to do it. Now, that suits different personalities to do that. Be in both. You're going to benefit from other people's experiences, and they can benefit from your experience. And that's why we need to be a little active. But of all the initiatives that I've seen so far, I haven't seen anything with the potential of the People's Councils at a grassroots level. Now, you've got to use a bit of common sense when you're talking geographically, because if you're in a little town like Richmond in Western Queensland, where there's 500 people, and I think it's probably 300 kilometres in each direction to another town, that's probably going to be your council, right? And those other little towns along the track will probably be their own councils too. So it mightn't be big, but when you hit the cities and the bigger cities, you don't want your councils too big, because that's where the corruption happens. And when you look back historically, 10,000 has been about the maximum size of a community before no one knows who everyone is, So it's like, oh, is that person a stranger or not? So that is an ideal size, is 10,000. That's been proven over the millennia through history. That's a good size for a community. So aim at that, work around it. If you're geographically isolated, then you just have a smaller council. Smaller councils, there's less work involved because you've got less roads, less rubbish, less water. So, and you may partner with someone that's 30 kilometers down the road and say, hey, let's do a sort of a deal so we can share services. All these things are possible, but the most important thing is they're lawful too. And you can start collecting rates once you get to a big enough core of people that you're going to be safe from attack, because the attacks will come.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
and I'm
will.
not talking physical attack. I'm talking lawfare. Yeah.
That's why we're blessed
Yeah.
to have
All
our litigation department behind us helping us when all that comes.
Do we want to move on to the tribal stuff?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, I
definitely.
think we're all excited about that, and we've all been having conversations to get our areas underway. Even over here in Western Australia in this last week, we've been talking to some people to get that underway. So I'm super excited to be joining that conversation. And yeah, take it away, what you guys have been doing. I know, Kim, you've been doing something up there with another tribe, the third tribe or something, and so has Wollongong, I believe.
Yeah, they are underway. We are working with our tribes up here. Just when we say tribes, so the nations are built on language area. And for example, in our area up here, there is 22 different tribes within that language area. So it's about bringing the elders together so that they can all know exactly what this is about and what the process is and what it means for them and what it means for us and what it means for the unification of Australia. So we've been working very hard up here, also having lots of conversations with other tribes around Queensland as well. So it's really exciting that the grapevine is off and running at full speed. And more are hearing about it, and more would like to come on board. So I'm going to hand over to Lance now to give the overview of what's going on.
Yeah, look, if there's a common theme with what's happening, this is rolling out like a bushfire. It's pretty hard to control. We've put a new team together, and we'll be asking for team members to come in again to assist geographically, because there's a lot of work to do, and the tribes need help with some of the stuff, and they need good people for some of the stuff. This is really, really a partnership. Make no mistake about it. This is not help the tribes to stand up and walk away from them. They're going to need support. This is a journey we go on together. So with one exception, everybody who we've explained the system to, and it's not our system, so we're just the messenger. Every time we've presented, they've said, yep, let's get on board. That's been unanimous. Now, the one exception that has stood back, they are really, really fractured. A lot of their elders are, especially in the male side, got social problems. So they feel isolated. But they're also working with someone who's really cool, who's doing a lot of letters and helping them with processes, and they're winning anyway. So they're getting people released from prison. They're being accepted as the Crown already. And so they're having wins. And so they're thinking at the moment, well, maybe we don't need to do the whole system. Maybe it's a lot of work for nothing. But when they see what everyone else achieves, I know they're going to come to the party, because they're awesome people. They're just taking their time, I think, to come to the right conclusion. And if they don't, they don't. We don't need to capture everybody for this to succeed. We just need to capture enough for this to succeed. And I think we're pretty close to critical mass now. So I'm going to say we're looking at 90% of Queensland, 50% in New South Wales, maybe more than 50% in New South Wales. Victoria is done. Northern Territories, Alice Springs, South Australia, and Western Australia, that whole territory, those people are all very, very closely related and integrated. So the NT in South Australia, they're all like they've bought in already, so they're coming to the party, and it'll go across to Western Australia. Well, it is in Western Australia. The top end, the Kimberley, they've already said, yeah, we're in. So they're coming on board, and so we've just got to get the southern part of Western Australia, and it's a big state.
It is.
And there's lots of tribes. It's going to be a big job.
We're a third of the country, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I don't think we're going to end up with 750 tribal nations.
No.
I really don't. I think you'll find that they'll probably come together, like Kim said, in language groups, form their councils. They know who's who. There's no mistake.
Genealogy is important for them, isn't it? The right genealogy to get in these tribes is important, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Ainsley has had a conversation with a really awesome man in Western Australia. Is he based in Perth, Ainsley?
By the sounds of it, I think he might be based in the Northern Territory. He does a lot
really?
of work between NT and WA, because he does a lot of work with the, translating and stuff for the courts as well, with the language, and very extensive experience in both Australian business and Aboriginal business.
Yeah,
I think, Lance, maybe just for those who don't know, we should just give an overview of what a nation means. What is this about? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Do you want to? Yeah.
All right. Let's start at the beginning. Captain Cook rocked up. He was sent on a mission and told, "Don't come back until you bring us something significant from this part of the world," because they'd heard the stories and they thought, let's go and capture it. But because of laws and because of the changes to slavery laws that had been agreed, he could only capture vacant land. So he found his vacant land on Norfolk Island and then committed the fraud of saying that this land here was vacant, and that's how they did the fraud. Now, we've only ever been a trading post of Britain. That's how we're considered, even internationally, still to today. And if you go on the UPU, Universal Postal Union, which is in Bern, Switzerland, and look up Australia, you'll see there's an NF after the name Australia, NF Norfolk Island. Right? So everyone internationally knows about the fraud that's happened. So then you come back to the originals, and they lived in these extended family groups and extended language groups, and they had territorial lands which they protected fiercely, and they recorded those lands through songlines. So as they would walk around and check their lands and their boundaries and migrate, follow the herds, go to where the crops were good, because they would store grain, and they would plant yams and go back there and harvest them. And they followed the seasons around their tribal land. And as they did that, they would sing songs that told them which way to travel. So I'm not going to sing for you, but can you imagine it's like, right, you go down to this creek, then you go up here to this bend, and then you head for the big mountain with the bald top on it. And this became a song that they recorded in their culture, and they learnt this song as they travel around hundreds and hundreds of times till it became perfect. And so those songs are called songlines, because that tells them about their boundaries and where they are. And that's what that defined the tribal nations. Now, move forward to now, and they've got to make their claim to be the crown under international law. You can't be the crown unless you have land. So one of the things to prove that you're the crown is to map your country. And that's what they're doing. And that's what we help them do. So they go on their original song lines, we map it, we say, right, it went here, there, there, there. We create a map. Now, they didn't have surveyors. So they didn't use timber pegs, and they didn't have GPS or theodolite or anything like that. So we don't need to do that. to recognize their boundaries, because it comes back to one of the maxims of law: first in time, best in law. So their law is the best, it's the oldest, so it gets the most respect, it's the most powerful. So we don't have to survey their lands, they just accept it because they know the language, they know the song lines, they have their customs intact, they have their law intact. They become the highest recognized inhabitants in right. And then through their tribal structure, which is an elders council, right? Just because you're old doesn't mean you're an elder. You have to be old, responsible, know the law, be initiated. All these things create rank in the system. And the depth of your knowledge determines who that person is, and the behavior that you exhibit determines who that person is. It's going to be ultimately the chief or the women's law chief. And the women's law may be the highest law, like it is in the Waka Waka. So the women controlled everything in the Waka Waka, and that's their culture. So, you know, we can't go in and change that. So when they make this claim internationally, these things are all recorded already, because the POM's recorded everything. And so when we made the claim for the Githable Narakbal, they would have looked at the data and said, yeah, okay, that's close enough. We can't disprove this, so we won't mention it. Because if they acknowledge it means take knowledge. They take knowledge of it, and then they're bound. So they're just sort of like, oh, just ignore it. Just ignore it and hope they fall over. Ignore it and try and get them back into service contract, where we keep contracting them through giving them unemployment benefits, give them health care, give them a driver's license, give them a passport. So those things have got to change. And that's the new world. That's the challenging part.
I think it's important. Sorry, Lance. I think it's important to note here too that they never ceded their land. No other country in the world is where Australia sits right now, because our Aboriginals never ceded their land. It's a really important factor.
Oh, it's vitally important. There's no treaty. They never sold. There's no receipt. So these things are very, very important under international law. Now, they possibly could have treated up until 71, 73, when the Queen left. The Queen, because she's a recognised crown, could have treated with the crown of this land and formed a legal treaty. But she left and no treaty was done. Now, we don't have a crown to treaty anymore, and under international law, companies can't treaty. They can contract, but they can't treaty. So treaty's out the window. Ownership is out the window. I think I've told you all this before, but every High Court law case has proven that they are the original custodians of the land. So they have common law and custodial rights. So that is, that's the highest right to the land. Now, we can loosely use the term they own everything, but that's a scary term, right? They do own everything. But fortunate for us, they're beautiful people and they want to share everything with us, the good people. So
I think that was going to be the next avenue is that.
I'll let you go for a while, Kim.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think I was just wanted to make the point that I think that's where we need to cover off, because there's a lot of fear around this, and fear on both sides. So many people have been indoctrinated throughout schooling and have been taught a certain way of history, as most of us on this call know, and a lot of other people out there. Almost everything that we have been told, history included, is a lie. Or there might be some half-truths in there, but generally not. And so the purpose of that whole program was to generate fear, install division, make sure that we never, ever, as a nation, came to the point where we united in its entirety. And most of the fear generation comes from being taught that fear generation. There was a lot of stuff that happened back in those days. But right now is the time to move past that, to heal those wounds and come together united as a nation so that we can take this country back. So I think we should talk a little bit about what that means for us in a nation as well, because there's a lot of people who do hold that perspective of this isn't anything to do with us. How is that going to affect us? Are we going to be left out in the cold? All of those types of things. So you might want to talk about that, Lance.
Yeah, well, look, it's already working in Cairns, in Githable, Narrakpul. The councils are important at a local level because everyone knows everybody. So the Crown authorises the councils to do what they need to do. And Spiros came up with a beautiful idea at the meeting yesterday. The tribes will recognise the legitimacy of the people's councils. The people's councils will recognise the legitimacy of the tribes. Now, when you look at the tribes, underneath of the tribal elders, they have stacked ministers. And ministers have portfolios and stuff that work for them because we have functions to perform, just like normal government, because we have to provide governance. So you've got we the people's councils doing their stuff at the local level. You step up to the tribes, right? And all the ministers underneath the tribes. And the ministers have to put all their changes up to the tribal elders. Now, if it doesn't fit with law, it doesn't get approved. So think of the tribal elders as the Senate, the upper house, right? Where laws, they look at it and they say, no, that's not what we want to do. That's not right. They discuss it. They come back and say, try that again. But because the tribes are a little smaller, and we see this in the big states, look at the size of Western Australia. It's ridiculous that it's governed from Perth, because that loser,
the clown,
that's the premier over there, he wouldn't have a clue what's happening outside of Perth. Wouldn't have a clue, not interested. Queensland, another massive state. Queensland should be split up. If we were going to stay under the old system, we'd have to split it up anyway, because it's disproportionately unfair to the people of North Queensland, because they create Central Queensland, North Queensland creates 90% of the wealth. And it's spent by the losers in Brisbane. And they spend it on themselves. So we have fantastic infrastructure. The North has garbage infrastructure, and they're creating all the money. Now, that's not equitable, right? So this is where we come back to equity. Now, say we end up with 40 tribes across Australia and tribal nations. How do we create the equal distribution or equitable distribution? The tribal nations' main objective, number one objective, is to protect the Commonwealth. Right now, the Commonwealth is not the Commonwealth government. None of them want to protect Albanese. Okay, he can do whatever he does. He's not in the equation. The Commonwealth is the people and the land. That's what they want to protect. So to protect that, they will set up a structure, a nice big fluffy blanket that's going to sit over the top, where everyone can come together and look at the big picture, the 60,000-foot view. Who we're going to trade with, who we're going to ally with, who is going to share in this section of the mineral wealth. What does this nation need here? Because they don't have a lot of natural resources. All those things that will create equity right across the land. So that's the big plan. It doesn't look too dissimilar to what we've got now. You've got, except it's built on integrity and it's about the people. So you've got the councils, you've got the tribes, which will be like smaller states, and you've got a nice big umbrella keeping everything running smoothly sitting over the top. But when you look at infrastructure spends and organizations for the top, apart from distribution, the main function is going to be trade and defense. That'll be the main function.
Lance, will we do trade with these groups? Will trade with each other using PMAs? Because I know that's another topic that we can delve into. And obviously, we've still got lots and lots of projects to talk about. We're not going to get through them all tonight, but maybe this could be like part 1, part 2, part 3, leading up over what they call the silly season, because we could there's a lot to talk about with all these projects, and we want to share with people how they can keep up to date with what's going on in these projects as well before tonight's end. So is it through PMAs that they're going to be doing commerce?
Right. So if you look at the structure of the tribal councils, it's invitation only. It's secret, right? Okay, they don't talk about what happens in tribal council outside of tribal council. You'll get to know the results, but you won't get to know who said what and who did what and that sort of stuff. That's a PMA. So it's probably the oldest PMA in a tribal cultural sense, because we know they're arguably the oldest culture on the planet. Now, all right, like I love the Bible, I don't hide that. So the oldest PMA for me is God, Adam, and Eve, because they joined in a holy union and they agreed to certain terms and conditions. That was the original PMA, Private Members Association. So for me, when Adam and Eve were in the garden doing what they were told, it was all happy. When they didn't follow the agreement that they'd made, and everything turned bad, and they broke the PMA, and sure enough, the PMA punished them like it always does, and they would surely die. So that's the oldest story of the oldest PMA. So PMAs aren't new. Now, the tribes have a right to trade intertribal through contract, through treaty, because you've got Royal House who can treaty with Royal House. So that's well established in international law as well. So all the mechanisms are there, and there is no lawful mechanisms there for these scumbag, belligerent, occupying government that we have, except laws of war, because they're a belligerent, occupying foreign force. So that's all they're relying on. You step outside of that, and they're useless. Now, the tribes are declaring peace, and as they declare peace in their land, in their tribal lands, because our government is at war against us, all of a sudden our government now comes under Geneva Convention. And under Geneva Convention, once the tribes declare peace, the government is duty bound under Geneva Convention to protect them. And if they don't protect them, it's war crimes against the Crown. And war crimes against the Crown is treason. And the punishment for that is life imprisonment or death. So these guys are staring down the barrel of it. And because we know this, we can inform them that this, they'll do the research. Most politicians wouldn't understand where they are. I think half of them probably got vaccinated. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Half of them aren't in the club. Not all of them are in the club, guys. They think they're in the club, but they're not. So the tribes are powerful. They're great people. They want the best for this country. They couldn't possibly be worse than our government, who wants to genocide us. And we collectively, as a people, have been trying to genocide the First Nation pretty much unprotested for 230 years. So I think it's miraculous that they want to engage with us. I
Mm.
think that is such a leap of faith for them. We should be honored that they're even considering it, you know,
Yeah.
all things being equal. Kim and I have heard the stories as we've traveled around, and the massacres is everywhere we go. They wanted the Richmond Valley, which is Ballina, and then up into the hills. So they rounded up 2,000 Githabul and Arakbul on the banks of the river, the Richmond River, and just shot them all in one go. Men, women, children. Same thing we found in Emerald. Same thing we found in Mackay. Everywhere where we've gone, there's the massacres. So they're not isolated incidents. It's not just Tasmania that had a hard time. This is absolutely everywhere.
And that's what we talked about before, is that, you know, there's a lot of fear on both sides of this. And from the original sides, you know, there is some fear there as well that that's going to happen again, because it's uncharted territory for everybody right now, for our everyone. This unification of everyone has never been done before in this way. Lance, I think one of the, just a couple of the important things, that questions that people ask about a nation. And I know in the last few presentations that I've done, everyone wants to know about the UN, the affiliate, where does the UN fit in, and where does the WEF fit in? So I think it's really important that we get those kind of things on the table. Understandably, everyone is nervous about any mention of those two. So I think if we could explain that to everyone, would be a good thing.
Yeah. Look, the World Economic Forum obviously is administered by very bad people. But to know what's going on, you need to be in it. So when you look through the World Economic Forum, there's still good countries that are involved in it so they can have their say. I think the 2021 meeting, Vladimir Putin got up and said, look, you've failed. Your fourth industrial revolution is not going to happen. The people don't want it. Now, he couldn't have said that unless he was there. So it's important that we realize that some of these things, as horrible as they are, we still need to engage in while we're at this point in history. With the UN, it's exactly the same. You've got good people and you've got bad people. There's opposition in all things. So I'm very well connected to someone who is business partners with the technologies director for the United Nations. So, and there's two sides to the United Nations. There's the public side and the private side. So these guys work in the private side of the UN, and it's almost a mirror of the public side, but most of the decent work is done in the private. The other guys are there for the camera moment, but they don't actually have a lot of say on policy. So they're in an active war within themselves. And I'm going to bring you back to this point. So we know high-ranking members of the UN that got vaccinated. And one of their wives is in hospital with heart problems now. So connect the dots on that. That's an indication that it's not always obvious what's going on in the world. He wasn't awake. She wasn't awake. So they bought into this narrative thinking they were doing the right thing. And there you go. And they're operating at that level. Why? Because they're not in the club, because they're good people trying to do good things. And we try and work with good people wherever they are. You know, it's like there's good police officers. I know that's hard to believe. And there's definitely none in New South Wales or Victoria. But there are good police officers. And that's the same situation. Good people stuck in bad situations. Now, don't make excuses for the police, because they're cowards. And that's the bottom line. The ones who left, who stood up and said, no, stick it. I'll find a career outside of this. I'll find another way to feed my family, to pay my mortgage, blah, 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 blah. Right? I've got respect for the people that left. The people that stayed and made excuses, they are the most complicit in this crime because they're there to uphold the law and they failed. So they're our line of defense. They don't work for the government. They're supposed to be there to uphold the law and they failed us. So that, look, if Bosie gets into power by some miracle and hangs them all, I'm not going to lose any sleep, guys. I'm going to be honest. I won't be hanging anybody. And I'm just talking about, the ridiculous part of the conversation now.
Yeah.
But
I just, I
they
think
need to be brought
too,
to justice.
I do. I think it's also really important to note just on the UN side of things as well that, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, the Yidinji don't have voting rights on the UN,
No,
but they are recognised
they
by
are
the UN.
recognised. And
So they are
and
recognised as a nation.
yeah, and same as Githable and Arakbal, to vote in the UN, you need to be a financial member. Right? That takes a lot of money. So they don't have those resources yet in cash to pay those bills. So, and look, we're one planet, right? Allegedly, I don't care what shape it is. There's got to be some way that we all connect. And if the United Nations could be a force for good in the future, well, that's a good thing. It just needs a little bit of a tidy up, doesn't it? So
Just a tad.
yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Now I'm going to tell you something really cool about what the tribes can do. So it is not only the right, but it is a necessary function of the Crown to do debt forgiveness. So here's the really, really cool thing. The Crown can collapse all the mortgages. Right. And that is one of the initiatives that we're pretty keen to get started in collapsing all the residential mortgages.
I think you
Because
just got them all excited then, Lance. If that didn't excite them, I don't know what will.
I think it's important to say this, though. I think it's really important to say, do not run out and buy 7 mortgages.
No.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just do not do that. Karma will come back at you if you are doing it for the wrong reasons. So just take that on board for what it is and don't allow any kind of greed or anything like that to come into play, because that will negate everything that is being done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I can explain that a little bit deeper, maybe some of the policies that may come through, and I'm just, sort of using my crystal ball. If I had any say in how it was done, they would collapse the residential mortgages for owner-occupiers. That would be the first cab off the rank to free the people who have made the effort, right? If you're a landlord and you've been using negative gearing and rental income and leveraging against your capital gains, then if you're paying interest and you're paying a mortgage, well, that doesn't really worry me. Because I look at those landlords and think, well, what's going to happen when we get decent government and we offer everybody affordable housing, right? Where a young couple or an older couple or some couple can come in under a whole new model where there's no interest paid, own their own home outright without a mortgage ever being on it, and they'll own it in 10 years. Well, the renters are going to give up rent. And when the renters give up rent, what happens to the value of the investment properties? It goes down because there's no demand for them. Now, if you're a business and you've had to buy business premise and your business is supporting that, well, I don't have a problem if you're paying a mortgage on that either. Eventually we'll get rid of mortgages, but to be fair and equitable, you're not going to go into Qantas and write off $10 billion worth of debt, are you? To say, oh, we're doing debt forgiveness. You're just not going to do it because they're a business.
Mm.
So the good news is for the owner occupiers and their mortgage. Now, look, some people have paid their house out, okay, and that's a good thing. We're not going to sort of necessarily top people up, but we're creating a society that's going to have lots of benefits for everybody in it. So the rewards will be there in other ways. Living in a society that's free of debt probably means there's a lot less crime. It probably means people are a lot happier. It probably means people don't need to work
So
50
hard.
hours a week.
Exactly.
So they have time. So they have time to raise their children. So their children aren't creating havoc. They live in a community. See how one thing changes everything.
Yeah. It's
And
a
that's
ripple
a
effect.
flow-on effect.
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, but that is a really cool thing. That's well established international law that the Crown can forgive debt. So and it's got to happen, and it will happen.
Excellent. Well, just before we wrap up tonight, guys, because I would definitely like, and I'm sure our listeners on here tonight have, hopefully you've enjoyed tonight's conversation. It is by no means finished. And, you know, maybe we'll talk with the guys. We might even continue part 2 next week. But what I would like to leave you with is I just would like to quickly share the group that we have created. I'm just going to share screen for a moment so that you guys all know where you can keep up to date with the projects that we have got rolled out. It is a specific TAP project updates group. It is not for the latest news and information and screenshots and links. They will all be removed. It is not for anything else but updates to do with each of the projects. So I'm just going to quickly, if you're following and along on the screen, I'm going to show you what's in here because it is a channel and it is a discussion group. Now, the discussion group is linked to the channel, but if you want to comment on the projects, you need to go back through this very first channel that you come into, which is the actual channel. You find the group that you would like to comment on, and you come back and you comment through the comment section. Any post that is not through a comment section will be removed. And that is so if you want to discuss, I'm just going to quickly go through these projects. If you want to discuss or talk about any of the projects, you're doing it in that one thread. And that way, that whole conversation stays together. But bear in mind that because this one channel is linked to the group, then every single conversation from every single thread will be in the group. So just make sure when you're discussing, you always come back to the folder that it relates to. So inside our project updates group, we have a discussion thread for the TAP satellite groups. We have a discussion for the banking platform, which hopefully we'll get to talk about next week, along with our communications platform. So they are 2 really cool projects that we would love to update you on. And that gives you an incentive to come back next week and hear what we've got to say about those. We want to have a thread for education. We also have a thread for the title deeds on the action group for the mortgages. We have one for the sovereign nations, which is going to be a hot topic because as they start to roll out and things are happening in Queensland and Western Australia and Victoria, we're going to be able to come in here and update you on what is happening with those nations, with their flags, with their stamps, with their seals, and you'll be able to see all that as we go along. If there's any events that are being held throughout Australia, you'll be able to come in here. All we ask is if there is a flyer, when you're creating your flyers, you be really specific with the full address and the full suburb and the postcode so that you can see very clearly which state your event is in, because as I said, this is Australia-wide platform. There's a little update here on how you operate in the group. Then we added some more. We added People's Council. We added a health and wellbeing section because there's a lot of different groups coming together in the health and wellbeing side. We have a section for the PMAs. We have a directory here, which both the directory and the welcome are in the pin post at the top. And that is so that you can find any of those folders even quicker. You don't have to keep scrolling. Just go to the directory. And if you want to get to one of those, like say, let me click on People's Council. I just come here and I click on People's Council, and it will take me straight back to the folder that I can jump in already, and I can then start chatting. And that is only to do with People's Council. So that just gives you a little idea of how it operates. And the last one is People's Trust. So guys, hopefully that is a really quick overview for you. I will put the link to that in the chat box so that you guys can all jump in and just please follow the guidelines of the group. That's all we ask, and that way your posts won't get removed. So there you go. Tap.
Hey, Ainsley,
Yes,
just
Lance.
before we wrap up,
Yeah.
how about we do a Q&A this week? Because I would have loved to have let everyone ask questions tonight. And it's just sort of like, he's interested and we'll do a Q&A night where you can ask any question you want.
Yeah, guys, if you're interested in that, drop in the chat box for us. Let us know if you would like a Q&A night where we can maybe even unmute you and have you on the call asking questions. Questions, not stories, guys. But if you want to do that, we can certainly organize that. Just give us some indication in the chat box so that we know that you're interested in a Q&A, and you can ask the guys anything you want. Hopefully we'll get Kent on here as well.
Why don't we do it Thursday night?
We have our exec meeting on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's okay. We can do the Q&A.
Yep.
What do you reckon?
Next Tuesday.
Very
See,
quiet.
Ainsley doesn't like it when I throw curveballs at her.
It's okay. Nobody's responding in the chat. Let us know in the chat, guys, if you would like a Q&A.
Yeah. On anything. There's a lot happening at the moment. It's exciting times, and we're across a lot of stuff.
Betty says yes, so we'll do it for Betty. Betty says yes.
Thanks, Betty.
All right, that's it.
That's it. Thanks to Betty. We're going to do a Q&A. Lynn's, yep, Q&A. That'd be great, guys. Now we love the interaction, guys. That's what fires us along. Yep, Kerry says she'd like a Q&A Thursday night. There's lots on. Catherine says yes. Cindy says for sure. Neville says yes. That's it. They're all coming in now. They all definitely want a Q&A. Maybe they were just a little bit sleepy on the keyboard there. Maybe you just stunned them all, Lance, with the debt forgiveness, and they were just in total shock, like I was when I heard that, and they just had to catch their breath for a moment to go, oh yes, we definitely want a Q&A. So all right, guys, we'll organize that. We'll make sure you follow the main Telegram channel for that. We'll put the link up for that, let you know what date and time that will be, but definitely we want to thank you guys for joining us and being a part of the Australia Project. We know there's a lot of exciting stuff that we're working on and rolling out, and we're definitely creating solutions that you guys are going to be able to step out of the old and into the new and feel very protected by. So Kim and Lance, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure sharing with you guys. You guys are so full of so much knowledge, and you guys are actively doing stuff there on the East Coast. I think I need to like time machine you guys over here into the West so that you can help us get a rocket up to the West, and we can certainly get some action happening here in the West. But I know we've got our little fingers already in the nation pot. So once we get that underway, I certainly know it's going to be exciting. But thank you for joining me once again. As always, a pleasure. And thanks to everyone who's joined us on the call tonight. We'll see you same time.
Thanks, guys.
Next week on Triple Tap. Bye for now.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.